Hello, BookTube. I had a meeting to go to today, an actual go out in the world, put your pants on meeting to go to. Of course, while I was going to it, I was thinking about something that I heard just recently from my favorite head librarian about how meetings are essentially useless. All of them, all the time, are essentially useless. I'm kind of wondering, those of you who have meetings of your own, do you agree that meetings are largely useless, that they're largely a waste of time? I know some people who bring books to meetings, or knitting, or crossword puzzles, just because they're a blatant waste of time. But anyway, I had to go, and I tried to put a good face on it, and it brought me near to a church here in Boston that's run by an old friend of mine, and he is preparing the basement of his church for the next big charity jumble sale that's happening this weekend. And he insisted on giving me first crack at the books. Usually he gives me last crack at the books. He assembles books, people buy them, go through them, whatnot, and then what's left over, he says, come over, fill a bag. I'm going to throw these away anyway. He doesn't do any carryovers because he gets too many donations. So I was ready for that. I vaguely knew that one was coming up, but this time he said that I could look at them first. And I objected at first, and he brought up, once again, a small favor that I did for one of his parishioners. It wasn't anything that any decent person wouldn't have done. I didn't even think about it, and but I wasn't going to argue with him. It's pointless to argue with him, so I did. I filled a bag with books. So this is almost certainly going to be my last charity shop used book haul of the year. Probably there'll be one or two more Brattle book hauls of the year, but this was huge. I once again, the last time this happened, the last time I took books from this particular church basement, I was likewise completely without muscular teenagers to act as dog's bodies. I had no one to carry my books except little old me, and I did. but in choosing the books, I once again forgot that fact until it was all over. And then once you've got a bag full of goodies, you're not going to put any back. So I had to lug them back here, and I wanted to show them to you. There were some real gems, and the first one was a book that I have in trade paperback. I absolutely love it. It's a classic. It's fantastic. I give it away every time I find a willing audience, and I have a trade paperback over on the shelf in this room under the explicit assumption that I would find a hardcover. A clean, good hardcover one of these days with a dust jacket. And I did. It's Ancestor's Tale by Richard Dawkins. A big, fat, omnium gathering book of his where all about the subject that he loves, all about evolution by natural selection, all about the byways, convergent evolution, all sorts of complexities. It's amazing. It's one of those books that has an amazing revelation on almost every page. It's just astonishing. And I want it in hardcover, because I do go back to it regularly. And the trade paperback that I have that I found a little while ago, I might have hauled it on this channel, was always going to be a bit of a placeholder. And now it need not. So now I have this. I will just pull that trade paperback off the shelf, and that's great. This next one, I read originally when it came out. It's a nonfiction author whose work I really like. And I viewed this charity shop bag as just I didn't view this as I'm shopping for the ages. Instead, I thought, these are free, you're not far away from home anyway, it's not like it's a backbreaking amount of work, it was unexpected, just grab what you want, and if you don't end up wanting to keep it, if it doesn't end up in your collection in some other room or in the Holy of Holies here in the Sanctum Sanctorum, then just get rid of it. In other words, I didn't emotionally bond with the idea of any of these books. It was true that I found, right away, I found something that I want to keep and that I want to keep in this room. But I didn't apply that at all to any of these. I just grabbed whatever was interesting to me. Not that I might keep this book. I read it and was impressed, but also depressed. It's Jeremy Scahill's book, Dirty Wars. And the subtitle, you can see, The World is a Battlefield. And that might seem like hyperbole, but the case he makes in this book is that small, under the radar, off the books, mercenary warfare is the way of the future. The case he makes is that huge scale, armies at dawn type conflicts are a thing of the past. Doesn't explicitly link it to the vast international exchange of bribery, of money, and he doesn't link it to the surveillance state either, not explicitly. It's just he's not drawing conclusions. He's rather just surveying the way things are, and he's a terrific writer. He wrote Blackwater. Some of you may have known his book on Blackwater. This is just Blackwater on steroids. It's an amped up version. It's Blackwaters, all the Blackwaters in the world, all of the private and off the books mercenary forces being used in the world. Tremendously depressing reading, but I was really impressed by it when I read it. This came out, I think, 5 years ago. 2013. So I'm well due for a reread, and I figured since it's there, since it's effectively free, why not? Then this next one is a de-accessed library book, so it's going to take a little work to make it usable, to make it something in my library, and I will do that work, but I'm not sure that I'm going to keep it. We shall see. This came out right at the beginning of when Open Letters Monthly was first launching, so I still didn't have my legs underneath me here and to be a reviewer again and simply request a copy, so I never got one. So I have never actually read this, even though it's right up my alley. It's by Virginia Rounding, and it's her biography of Catherine the Great. And there you can see the library sticker, and there is the library sticker for those things need to be removed. And in order to remove those, you have to take the plastic coating off, then negotiate the stickers, and then either put the coating back on if it will still work or not. One way or another. The subtitle of this thing is Love, Sex, and Power, and that gives me pause because Catherine the Great has... I don't even know where to start. She is so frustrating to read biographies. The biographies of her are so incredibly bad. It's every one of them almost is a kick in the teeth. It's the same thing as if you're a Tudor fan. If you're a Tudor fan, you might know what I mean, where every year you hope that you're going to get a nice big meaty biography of Henry VIII, and what do you get? A trot about the wives, a trot about infidelities and musicians behind tapestries and whatnot, and you're reading it thinking, okay, not only have I read this a million times before, but this is not history. Chase down any one of these anecdotes and you will find nothing except other people telling the same story. You won't. Catherine the Great does the same thing, and when you rub away all of the extraneous historiography reasons why, you get down to plain old garden variety sexism. This was a woman who ruled with smarts and an incredible amount of willpower, decisively, for years, one of the most powerful countries in Europe. So, of course, let's not concentrate on that. Let's concentrate on lovers and illicit affairs and all sorts of ridiculous stuff. Robert Massey, a great historian, a great biographer of Russian luminaries of one kind or another, wrote a whole career full of fantastic, defining books. And then I thought he retired. I thought, he's probably getting a little old. He's probably not able to write a big, serious work of scholarly history. And he came out with a biography of Catherine the Great that totally surprised me. It's a magnificent work. And it totally concentrates on Catherine as a ruler, on Catherine as a statesman, on Catherine as a legislator, on Catherine as a figure to her people. And I'm hoping that this book does the same, despite that subtitle. I'm hoping, against hope, that it does the same. I admit one of the reasons why I'm sounding tentative about keeping this book is because I have Massey's book, and it was certainly the best biography of Catherine the Great that I've ever read, and I find it hard to believe that this book will equal it, much less surpass it. But if it shades in areas that Massey doesn't do, or if it equals it in some other way, there's nothing wrong with having 2 biographies of Catherine the Great. I do, after all, have 8 biographies of Lord Byron. So I could. But anyway, the next one's also a biography. I've had this thing on and off, and this one is going to need some tender love and care, but I'm happy to do it. This is Ronald Clark's biography of Benjamin Franklin. Lovely classical-looking thing that came out in the 90s, I think. I have a couple of other Franklin biographies. Franklin is also one of those characters that is usually ill-served by his biographers because he is so easy to portray as larger than life that most people do. was given out in 1983. And I read it when it came out at the Boston Athenaeum, and I really liked it. And I've had it from time to time, and when I haven't had it, I've wished that I did. So I have a bunch of other Franklin biographies of different periods of his life, but as far as a one-volume Franklin biography of the whole life, there have been times many times when I wished that I had this thing, and I just, random chance happened not to. And now I do, so I'm hoping that I keep this in my library. Last time that I wished I had it was I was reviewing a new book on the young Benjamin Franklin, and I wanted this book, and it wasn't there. And I made do. I made a very good review, but I still. This next one, huge historical novel. I read it, loved it, praised it, put it on the all-important Stevereads list for that year, and then got rid of it. Got rid of the advanced copy, got rid of the finished copy, got rid of the paperback, and now, so I saw it, the beautiful hardcover for free. I got it, and it's The Accursed by Joyce Carol Oates. In my opinion, the best thing she's ever written. A gigantic, sprawling historical novel that is set in turn of the 20th century Princeton, New Jersey. So you've got Grover Cleveland and Woodrow Wilson and all sorts of other Princeton luminaries. But in addition to the straightforward historical fiction that runs throughout here and that's done really, really well, there's also a weird undercurrent of supernatural. And my first impression, the 100 pages in the first time with the advanced copy was, that's not going to work. Why are you doing that? These are two different books. But it does work. It does work, very much so. I realize that I'm treading on Eric Carl Anderson's territory here because he has an incredible relationship with one of the greatest literary figures of the late 20th century, of the second half of the 20th century. How many of you have had a great 20th century author dedicate a book to you? But nevertheless, I am allowed to talk about Joyce Carol Oates. I have been reading her longer than Eric's been alive. But he might be the expert, but I really recommend this book. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I'm glad to have another shot at it. Same thing with this one. This is another thing that I absolutely loved. It's the debut novel, and I read it and loved it. And I can't remember if it made the debut novel list that year. I'll have to check. I'll leave a link if it did. But then I got rid of it, and I haven't had it. And I view almost all of the books here in this secondhand shop as just another bite at the apple, just an invitation to reread the thing before the year is over. And it's Richard Harvell, The Bells, a historical novel about a young man who is raised in a bell tower and comes out with supernaturally gifted hearing, as opposed to being deaf like Quasimodo. he comes out with it's sort of, there's an element in which this is like Patrick Susskind's Perfume, only the main character doesn't have a super sense of smell, he has a super sense of hearing, and the main character is not evil, he's good. And there's one other difference between the two characters that happens to our main character here that doesn't happen to the main character in Perfume. I don't want to spoil the book for you, but it's a debut, and I really liked it. So I'm going to give it another try and see how it weathered. Maybe it stinks now. Then this next one is the University of Michigan Press. I swear, was not aware of this, and I don't even know the full extent of it. I'm going to have to look it up. This is Marion Fay by Anthony Trollope, with all of the original illustrations. There is Adam at Memento Mori tending to his fireplace. And I don't know if the University of Michigan did all of Trollope in these really big trade paperback editions. I don't know if they did or not. And did they all include the original artwork? And are there original notes in here? I don't have any idea. I haven't read Marion Fay in probably 20 years, so that'll be fun anyway. And I can definitely live with this edition. I'll just reinforce it a bit so that it can stand being in the bag, but that's fine. Then this next one is a keeper. This next one is one of the ones in this collection here of books that I know I'm going to keep, and that's going to be in this room. I've mentioned that I am slowly building a shelf of great short story collections, and today I found a hardcover with the original Beautiful Dust Jacket of one of the greatest of those collections. This is the Stories of Flannery O'Connor with the peacock cover. Now it's got a little bit of wear and tear, but I can fix that. I'll reinforce this dust jacket, and this will immediately go on that shelf. I will probably do a liberal amount of rereading in here. I cannot, those of you who have not read Flannery O'Connor, I cannot recommend these stories highly enough. They are like nothing you have ever read. And they just get stranger the more you think about them. I was very happy to find it, though. Wonderful. For free, I'll just reinforce it, and then it'll be in here. And this next one is the first volume in a trilogy. I actually showed you the second volume and mentioned that I was trusting that I would find the other volumes. I was expecting to find the other volumes at the Brattle, but I found this one today. This is Heaven's Command by James Morris. And this is... he did a trilogy about Victorian England. Don't really know what you'd call it. It's not really scholarly history. It's more a pageant. It's extremely evocative. There's nothing, factually wrong with it, but it's meant for almost a cinematic approach, and it works really well as that. It's wonderful as that. And this is the first volume. There is a young Victoria and a young Albert, and I don't have it. I don't have this trilogy. I love it. I absolutely love the trilogy. It's a trilogy that I reread. So when I found Pax Britannica at the Brattle, I assumed I would find the other two volumes. And I might still. Who knows what shape they'll be in. But this one was in good enough shape. I'll reinforce it, and it'll be fine. Then this next one is a throwback. It was a nostalgic pick. This was from the very beginning of Open Letters. This has to be 2007. 2009. This is what was when I was just getting back into reviewing books, and I was starting to realize, my friends and I have started a literary journal, and we're starting to attract writers, but we're also starting to attract review copies. And that was really interesting. It was really interesting to get back into the swing of that. So when I got these review copies, I reviewed them. No matter what. There weren't that many of them. And this was one of them. This is by Sarah Rees Brennan. I actually don't know anything about her later career. I don't actually know why I felt so attracted to this book. It's called The Demon's Lexicon. Maybe I like the title. Or perhaps it was the birds in the background. Kind of surprised. I'll have to figure it out. But one way or another, it's YA fantasy. And I wrote a review of this, if I remember correctly, eons ago. A whole 11 years ago. And I'll have to see if I can find that and post it. But when I saw it again, I was naturally morbidly curious to know how the book stands up to a rereading. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to give it a rereading. And then the next book, we've seen it on this channel before. I got a backup paperback copy just because it seemed like fate was putting it in my path. And it's The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This time in a trade paperback instead of a hardcover. I have a hardcover, now I have a trade paperback, under the assumption that I'm going to want to destroy one or both of them. Because the guys at Strip Cover Lit got me drunk and made me agree to a read-along of The Road in 2019. They are big fans of Cormac McCarthy because they are lost in the wilds of Dude Bro Lit. I hate Dude Bro Lit, and I hate its chief architect. And I can't stand this book. Of all of his books, I hate this one the most. So either I'm going to convince them, or they're going to convince me. The grand tussle will happen in 2019, and I will let you know the details, because that's something you're not going to want to miss. But I am going, believe it or not, well, and you will believe it, because if you watch this channel, you know that my bark is worse than my bite. I am going to go into this with an open mind, even though I've read it twice now and hated it both times. On deep levels, in addition to surface levels, I'm still going to go at it with an open mind, because I don't want to insult the guys at Strip Cover Lit. They're conscientious readers. They've been doing conscientious literary work over on their channel for a long time now here on BookTube. I don't want to insult them by just being that crabby old guy who goes into this with a full set of his own reactions that he loves more than he loves the book. So I will go at it with an open mind, and we will see. We will see. This next one was the biggest find of the day. It's the oldest book by far of the day. It's from 1915. It's by Kate Ryan, and it's Old Boston Museum Days. That is the gold lettering there, but it's been battered all the heck and gone. This is just a disastrous copy. It was sold at Lariat's in Boston, 385 Washington Street, where I used to work. A long, long time ago, I used to work there, and it was at 385 Washington Street, and then a long time passed, and then I took another job as a bookseller at Barnes & Noble at 395 Washington Street, and By that time, Laureates had long gone from 385, and there was a jeweler. There was a bunch of office buildings, and a jeweler was on the first floor, and I used to... In my first year of working at Barnes & Noble at 395 Washington Street, I would walk into 385 Washington Street because it had been reflex for so long to go in there to go to work, and after a while, the guy at the reception desk just knew, you've gone to the wrong... We're not a bookstore anymore, sorry. But this has an inscription. To Mary, remembering the old museum days together, H.E., Christmas, 1915. 1915. And this is Kate Ryan's account of what it was like to be in the theatrical group of the old Boston Museum. So actually let's show you our author. There she is in redoubtable middle age, and she writes. In writing this little volume, I have lived over again the days of the old museum. And as I recalled the faces and forms that peopled the stage of that famous old playhouse, I must confess to moments of sorrow recompensed by hours of joy. I doubt that even the most philosophical spirit, with never a tear or regret of the past, could delve into its recesses as I have done without longing for the old museum days that are gone. Yet the memory of those days will leave for all time something of value to remember and cherish. And like so many authors who write books like this, that did not happen. Something more wonderful than that happened. The memory of the old museum company is long dead. Only Boston historians will know even what it means. It survived in this book. Not in popular memory, but in her own book. She did a huge... No one else thought to write this kind of book about... Once upon a time, Boston Museum was located on Tremont Street here in Boston. It wasn't the big Boston Museum of Fine Arts that you can find now and that you should you should attend if you go to Boston. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts now is a typical 20th century museum. It's climate controlled, it's quiet, people walk around in respectful silence looking at the artwork. There's a cafeteria where you can have some lunch, and there are pretty sculptured grounds. The old Boston Museum, in its couple of locations on Tremont Street, was a very different thing. An idea that is gone now from the 20th century. Started in the middle of the 19th century and just went on for about 70 years, maybe a little less than that. It's this enormous, beautiful building, and it was a million different things. There were live animals. There was a live zoo. There was a gigantic waxwork museum, especially with a special wing for scary waxwork for taking your kids. There are all sorts of food concessions and taxidermied animals, and natural history museum, an actual museum with great artwork and sculpture that you could go to and just wander around in, very similar to the way we do it now, but as part of the same building, as part of the same experience. And one of the things that the old museum did that drew people in like crazy was that it had its own theatrical company and a vast theater, a vast and luxurious theater right there on the premises. And Kate Ryan was one of the many, many actors who came and went from that company. All the shows they put on, all the experiences they had with the crowd and with playwrights and with the great actors of their day, including the Booth brothers. And she was there for it all. She wandered up to just some ticket guy at the old museum when she was just a young woman and said that she wanted to be an actress. And the concierge was mocking and said, "Can you sing?" And she said, "No, but I can learn." He said, "Can you dance?" And she said, "No, but I can learn." And just as a gag, he told her to go and find the one of the stage managers, and it took off from there. She had a fairly good career, and she writes about it in this book just wonderfully, so warmly. Oh my! It brings back a Boston that is long, long gone. There's scenes in here that are wonderful. It's a true theatrical memoir, which makes it great in its own right. That is a subsection of literature that I just love. But it's also a wonderfully personal book. There's a wonderful scene in here where she's just been given her first contract as an actress for, I think, $8 a week or something like that. And she's crossing Boston Common with her husband. And she's as light as a feather, just happy as a lark. I can't believe it. I'm so happy now. If I never get any more than this, I will be perfectly content. And her husband tells her, well, the more your value goes up, the more your wants will go up. So that might change. Don't be so sure. And I was so happy to find this because I have not had a copy in a long time. And it's going to be an absolute delight to read it again, even though the Boston in it is completely missing. It's completely gone now. But anyway, let's move on. We've got a little more to do here. This next one, penguin paperback of Sarah Wheeler's Terra Incognita, Travels in Antarctica. A terrific book that I end up giving to people all the time. So I don't think I have a copy of this at the moment. This is... she originally thought of Antarctica as she puts it, a place where old bearded guys went to die. But it turns out that when she visits it with, buttressed by modern technology so that she's not at the risk of dying, she finds a land of weird beauty, extraterrestrial beauty, but weird beauty. It's fantastic writing. She's just a great writer. And another thing here, I'm going to try again. I read this and really liked it the first time. This is Penelope Lively. This is Dancing Fish and Ammonites. A memoir of hers that I really, really liked, and I'm obviously you can guess why I'm in the mood to reread a memoir of hers, because she's pleased me lately. And I saw it there, and I don't have this, and I really liked it, so why not? And then the last three things. Oh my God, this is a huge thing. Well, the last three books that I got today are mass market paperbacks. I've mentioned that I'm moving away from reading mass market paperbacks. They don't strike me as very convenient. I make an exception for romances and science fiction that appear only in mass markets. And one of the romances that I found today is one from 2018, from this year, that I never actually bothered to buy. And no one ever actually bothered to send it to me, even though it's one of the best-selling romances of the year. And that's Eloisa James, the great Eloisa James. This is Born to be Wild. This is... she has the whole series now on the Wilde brothers. That is the cover, and that is the step back. And those are the other Wilde books. And I have read one of the Wilde brothers books, and I want to read the others, and I wanted to have this one. And then the other two things are not romances, they're murder mysteries. And they're available in more comfortable formats. I got them in mass market because I really like the design of these things. And now I realize, now that I don't have them, that I kind of want to get them all back. I've had them from time to time. And these are the Lord Peter Wimsey mysteries. I got two, Clouds of Witness and Red Herrings. And they have, the covers are by Marie Mitchell, and they're just lovely. The covers are just lovely. Very stylish, and yet kind of louche. So very much like Lord Peter. And I want the whole of Dorothy Sayers in these versions. They're throwaway murder mysteries. I'm going to read them anyway. And I don't have any Dorothy Sayers murder mysteries here, so I figured I'd just grab these. And the more of these gray, old mass market paperbacks that I see, the more I will get until I have the whole set. I got rid of my set, gave them to somebody, I think. But anyway, I'm buried in books here. That was it. That was our last charity mail haul of the year. It was great fun. I can't thank my old friend enough, even though I was aching all over when I got back here. But I'm going to wrap this up. 30-minute video on this phone, maybe taxing the phone a bit much. But I'll be back. We've got plenty else to talk about. So I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.